in about 20 minutes to present to the Clerk of the House. For those who don't realise the significance of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, this was adopted on the 30th of September 2007. It was a declaration that should have been adopted 50 or 60 years ago when the United Nations was formed. When they formed the United Nations after the devastation of World War II, it was the principle that the colonies that have the territories that have been colonised by the powers of Europe would be given back to the peoples under the people's control. And territories all around the world, particularly in the Pacific, in Asia, in Africa and in Latin America, were identified to be given back to control of the peoples under the self-determination. 37 new countries were created during that decolonisation process. But in Australia, like some other countries, no decolonisation has occurred. The conquest of Britain, of this colony, the denial of the Aboriginal peoples, the original peoples, of our rights to our land, to our natural resources and our minerals, still is denied. We can't exercise those rights today. We couldn't exercise those rights 200 years ago when Phillip landed in the First Fleet. This is an injustice. And it doesn't matter what the Australian Parliament laws say, it doesn't matter what the Queensland Parliament laws say, because these are the parliaments of the colonies. And they've never changed. Nothing has happened in this Parliament over here to decolonise. Nothing has happened in there to change it around to say we should ensure that the Aboriginal people have their own representation in their own country. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples says Indigenous peoples around the world have the right to choose their own political status. In Australia, we've never been given that right. For over 100 years, we've been locked on reserves. In Queensland, that continued up until 1984, only 25 years ago. People were still being locked up in reserves. And now they don't lock us up in reserves anymore. They lock us up in prisons, and they lock up our children. And the only actions taken by the governments, including the current Rudd government, including the Bligh government, is to turn us into individuals and to make us behave with the right social norms that Australian individuals are supposed to behave. We have to go and get a white education. We have to go and get a white job. We're not entitled to get our lands back. We're not entitled to get the benefits of the minerals and the resources that come from our lands and territories. We're not entitled to get the benefits from the exploitation of the agriculture that comes from our lands. We're not even entitled to get the benefits that comes from now the new wave of exploitation, the exploitation of the unique genetic resources of Australia. All of these things are denied from us. Just like the Mabo decision said in 1992, nearly 20 years ago, oops, we made a mistake. For the last 200 years we made a mistake. The Aboriginal people did own the land and we better do something about it. Just like the Mabo decision said 20 years ago and 200 years too late. The Aboriginal people own the land. We own the land before colonisation and we own the land since colonisation. But nothing is being done to fix that problem up. And it's not only the land, but it's the resources. It's what's underneath the land and it's what's above the land. This is all part of our rights. The rights, the Declaration says the rights to our lands, territories and resources. And it says we have the right to development. We have the right to economic, social and cultural development in accordance with our rights as peoples, in accordance with self-determination. Not to be told, go to school, learn English, do your maths and go get a white job. That is not our right to economic development. Our right to economic development is every time minerals are pulled out of this land, out of Queensland, every time they make a $50 billion deal with China, a share of those resources goes back to the Aboriginal people. And that share is to be negotiated. But there's not a whimper of a negotiation going on. The people inside this house are blind. They're blind to these issues. They don't know about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They don't know that the Australian government has said it supports the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And what's more, they don't care. What they care about is if we have the audacity to come out in front of the Parliament House and protest. If we have the audacity to come here and talk about our rights. If we have the audacity to come here and say we cannot be treated differently from other peoples in this world and from other peoples in this country. We have the same rights, and we have all peoples of this country. Moreover, they don't care that they're presiding over a system, an institutionalised system that keeps on taking away the benefits from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and giving them to everybody else in the country. It's about power, it's about money, and it's about being conveniently ignorant of the fact. And they can have as many committees of inquiries as they like, they can amend the Constitution as many times as they like. One day, they have to wake up to the fact that every single second that ticks by, every day that goes by, every week that goes by, and every year that goes by, the debt is building and the dishonesty is extending. It's not us who are breaking the laws. When we tie a flag to this fence, it is not us who are being bad people. It is not us who are being unjust. It is not us who should be thrown in prison. It is the prison, it is the people who are denying us our rights. So we want the Parliament, and we want the people inside the Parliament to do what they're being paid to do. To know about the issues in this country, to know about human rights, to know about equality, to listen to what the people are saying, to adhere to the will of the people, not the majority of the people, not the tyranny of the majority, but the will of the people. And in this case, the people are the Aboriginal people. We have a right to have our will expressed. This is the right of self-determination. And for 2 years now, we've been crying out, listen to what the rest of the world has said. Listen to what 143 other countries in this world have said. Indigenous peoples have rights. They have human rights which must be protected. And it is the responsibility of the governments and of the parliaments to review all their laws and to review all their programs and to assist and support Indigenous peoples to self-determination. Not to legislate to micromanage our lives and to control our families and invade our privacy about our bank accounts and how we spend our money. That is not what they are there for. They are there to uphold our rights so we can take responsibility for our futures, so we can go on knowing that our children are going to go up to be Aboriginal children and their children are going to go up to be Aboriginal people. And we know that we can go on sharing our sacred responsibilities with our country and protecting our lands and territories. And that we know that we will survive into the future. So when the civilisation of Australia has crumbled and fallen, we will still be the Indigenous peoples here. As we have been for 40,000 years past, we will be here for 40,000 years in the future. So it's time for this Parliament to now hear what we are saying. And this Aboriginal flag is the communication. It's the message. It's the message stick. Those colours tell you something. It tells you whose land this is. It tells you that we are peoples with the right of peoples. And it tells you that we have a different culture and we have a different way of life which has to be respected. Thank you.